I can see now why they call it the chocolate zephyr, but is it a treat? Hey guys, welcome back to Proper Chuffed. My name is Hilton and I have absolutely no idea what I'm doing. That's half the fun of this, isn't it? If you're new here and you enjoyed this content, please consider subscribing, that would be a great help. And if you're a returning viewer, welcome back guys. It's good to see you again. If you've been watching the channel for a while now, you'll know that I'm a big fan of strange one-off type prototype locomotives. And one of those that's been on top of my list for quite some time now is the English Electric GT3 from KR Models. KR Models are one of those new manufacturers on the scene, and they're certainly making waves with their eclectic collection of strange locomotives, including something like Southern Rail's Bullied, the Leader, and the Licky Banker, I believe it was called Big Bertha. Those are also on their way, and I'm quite keen to see how this GT3 stacks up and what we might be able to expect from KR Models in the future. So without further ado, let's take a look at the English Electric GT3. So here we go, the GT3 from KR Models, and my first model from them. As I mentioned, they do have a very eclectic range of new locomotives that they're hoping to bring out in the next couple of years, and I'm keeping a very close eye on this manufacturer simply because I am a big fan of those strange one-off type locomotives. So quite eager to see just how this stacks up, and then hopefully we'll get a good idea of where we're headed to with KR Models in the future. One of the things I just want to mention before I start opening this up is that I ordered this from KR directly, and I was in touch with Keith Ravel, who is one of the sort of major parts of KR Models. I'm guessing it has something to do with the KR, Keith Ravel, in some weird way. And he was super helpful. He helped me from start to finish to make sure that this was DHL'd to South Africa and that I had it on my doorstep within about 7 days or so, and it was absolutely fantastic. So thank you, Keith, and thank you, KR Models, for making this possible. Obviously, this is not a paid video or anything like that. I obviously made the purchase of the locomotive myself. So let's take a look at this and get going. One of the things I just want to point out, absolutely love this blueprint here of the locomotive. I'm a big fan of those, as you may have noticed through my previous videos. So great job, very clean. Exactly, you know exactly what's inside the box when you look at that. So let's take a look. Cool, I absolutely love this packaging style, this sort of like neat and clean, sort of well cushioned boxing style. We got a bit of a stop notice, just discussing about the fact that electrics are inside and you know things may have moved around just before. We got a nice little beautifully colored notebook with quite an extensive history of the locomotive itself, which is really nice. Always appreciate a bit of history. We have a service sheet, which is fairly well packaged and put together, just talking about how to open the whole thing up overall. And then the decoder installation guide on the back there. Again, also just some nice card, not paper, it's actually card, and I think that'll be around for a long time. And then we got a spec sheet with obviously different functions for the sound fitted versions, as well as a full breakdown, sort of blow up diagram of all the parts included here, which is absolutely fantastic. So, you know, I really can appreciate the fact that, first of all, they didn't do this with paper, they did it with cardboard, so it'll last a very long time. And overall, what you get is like a very professional feeling product straight off the bat. So here's the GT3 in the box, and nicely cushioned with inside the foam is in its clamshell packaging. This is, I think, really the smartest way to be transporting locomotives around. So here we have our GT3. Let's pull her out. There's a decent amount of weight to her, certainly, which is rather impressive. We've got a little detail pack here. Clearly some sprues in here that are need to have some parts taken off them. Looks like a couple of vacuum pipes and such. Nothing too eye-catching there. But yeah, let's take a look at this GT3. Okay, so it pops out from the rear here. Wow. Well, we know it's got the nickname of chocolate zephyr, and I can see why now. It really is a milk chocolate color in so many ways, and absolutely beautiful. I think a very cool choice of them to choose a brown color for a locomotive. There are a number of livery options available. There's an LMS black, a BR green, and weirdly a BR blue in sort of a fantasy livery. And I think that while those are very cool, I preferred the original prototype. So here we are with the chocolate brown English Electric GT3, and it certainly is a looker. From the top, incredibly sleek and smooth. From the sides, things get a little bit more complicated. Obviously, we've got sort of a more classic steam engine style here, although it was a gas turbine. We have the cab at the rear here with the main body and motor of the locomotive at the front. Sort of a more classic locomotive style, not like a sort of early diesel, I suppose, in many regards. The tender does feel a little light, but not too bad at all. Obviously, there's a nice fan at the top there, and then different vents all the way along the top of the locomotive here. Very clean at the top. But I love that color difference between the sort of chocolate brown and the sort of deep green that the bogies and the running boards are sort of painted in. Absolutely beautiful, and nice attention to detail. Small gauges here on the tender, the English Electric Vulcan Foundry logo on the back here, nothing like the BR logos, which certainly makes it stand out amongst its sort of more contemporary engines. The GT3 badging here, beautifully. That's already an etched metal plate that's been put on there, so that's absolutely stunning. Cab details, fantastic. The stairs are well done, but I think we'll probably just dive into it now, take a look at the history of the GT3, and then we'll take a look at the actual locomotive in person. The GT3, or Gas Turbine 3, was an experimental locomotive built in 1961 by English Electric to explore the use of gas turbines in rail transport. It was part of a series following the 1800 and 18100 models. Designed by J.O.P. Hughes, it resembled a traditional steam locomotive externally, but used kerosene as fuel. The locomotive had a 460 wheel arrangement and a fuel tender. It was equipped with heavy steel frames, carrying the engine components and providing weight for traction. Power came from an English Electric EM27L gas turbine capable of 2,750 horsepower. The locomotive and tender were both vacuum braked. Testing took place at various locations, including British Railways Rugby Test Centre and the West Coast Main Line. Despite promising performances, the GT3 was not further developed due to the rise of diesel-electric locomotives, which offered more convenience and efficiency. It was dismantled and eventually scrapped in 1966. Today, while the GT3 prototype may no longer roam the rails, its story continues to fascinate railway enthusiasts and historians, serving as a reminder of the ingenuity and ambition that have driven advancements in railway engineering throughout history. So here we are, face to face with the truly mesmerizing GT3 by KR Models. A remarkable rendition of this gas turbine prototype that perfectly embodies the essence of those rare one-offs that I always am so captivated by. As a first model, I think this is really impressive by KR Models. So I opted for the original prototype color, the sort of chocolate brown, despite the tempting fantasy liveries that were available, including the LMS black, BR green, and BR blue and yellow. It was an intriguing and fairly difficult choice, but I just felt that I should go with the original. It's evident that KR Models have spared no expense in bringing this unique locomotive to life. The meticulously applied details, such as the separately fitted steps and sprung buffers, are great to see, and the head code with its 4 white oval discs adds an authentic touch, I think, while the inclusion of replacement closed head code discs allows for a bit of customization if you wanted to. Moving along the sleek body of the GT3, I'm struck by its real elegant design, and it kind of reminds me of that Art Deco sort of period. I know this came a bit later, but it really does smack of like a 1920s era type design. The livery application here is really top notch. If you look at the little pinstripes that are around the body of the model, the yellow and green lining is very well done. I absolutely love the etched metal grills at the front, and they add a great sense of realism, matching the original prototype photos that I've seen. There's a lot of handrails fitted too, and they're meticulously fitted throughout actually. They really enhance the authenticity of this whole thing, and the separately fitted rails on the cab doors too and around the driver's cab windows look fantastic. Inside the cab, I'll show you just now, the level of detail I think is fairly impressive. There's a bunch of driving controls and seating, and there's a very, very powerful light in that cab that really kind of maybe isn't quite realistic, but it certainly adds quite a shocking effect to the whole thing. The tender completes the ensemble with authentic details from the cab communication door to the underframe. While the tender feels a bit light and can pose some challenges when running in reverse, as I've experienced, it still maintains a degree of authenticity, I think, especially when you look at the small little gauges and that brilliant Vulcan Foundry logo. Power transfer between the loco and the tender is pretty seamless thanks to that well-designed 6-pin power coupling. I really am impressed with this. This is a more contemporary design, and I see companies like Hornby now using it as well. So it's good to see that KR are sort of staying on the ball with this sort of thing. So the GT3 is equipped with a 21-pin decoder socket. You can get it in sound-fitted version, and it has a 5-pole motor, and it glides around the track fairly effortlessly. However, I did find that there was a bit of a torque issue, and I think this really comes down to the overall weight of the locomotive. It doesn't seem to carry itself up hills very well compared to some of the other locomotives I've seen in the same sort of wheel arrangement. But you know, it's a first try. I can't really be too critical of the whole thing. It is still rather impressive. So here we are on track with the GT3. There are 3 different light functions, obviously just for standard DCC fitting. You've got front, rear, and then obviously the very striking cab lights. Here's a closer look at the cab lights. You can see just how bright they are. They're quite stark. So putting the GT3 under power here, and this is the lowest possible speed I can get it to go at. So not a fantastic crawl overall. It's a decent slow speed, but you're certainly not going to be crawling around your yards with this by any means. Looking at the points and point work for the GT3, it handles it fairly well. My ballast is still fairly fresh, and this whole section of crossover needs to be cleaned up a little bit, so it is probably hitting a couple pieces of ballast as it heads over the crossover, but overall pretty smooth, doesn't have any issues whatsoever. As part of my new sort of test format, we'll send it up the whiskey line to the Dunroman distillery and see how the GT3 handles a 3 to 4% grade, just see if it's possible. It's always a bit of an interesting little test we do here. So as you can see, I need a little bit of a run up to get the GT3 up here. It doesn't seem like it has a hell of a lot of traction. A lot of wheel slip going on here as it's trying to head up the more steep part of the line. This is about 4%. So, you know, by no means am I expecting this locomotive to make it up there. This is obviously designed for smaller sort of tank engine locomotives to head up and down, but the GT3 really is struggling up here. A lot of wheel slip happening. So let's head back down and check out the curves. As you can see, the GT3 handles the second radius curve as well as the third radius curve with pretty much ease, no issues there. We'll now go into a bit of a running session with a very historically inaccurate set of coaches as we slap on some ScotRail West Highland coaches onto the GT3 and send it around the layout. So this is very interesting. The GT3 is now on a third radius curve heading up the hill, which is a 2% incline, heading back up to the station side, and as you can see, it has completely lost traction. It's just stopped moving basically. Needs a bit of encouragement from behind to get it going again, but this is very, I guess, a little bit disappointing. I'm surprised at 505 grams that this thing is not moving up that hill with 3 coaches behind it. It's quite disappointing. I'm not sure if this is a single model issue or if it's something that has plagued the entire range. If you have a GT3, please do let me know. I'd be super curious to know if you've struggled with traction issues as well. It's a striking locomotive, no doubt. I'm not sure exactly how I feel about it overall. I think it's a fantastic build, and obviously for a first go by KR Models, it's absolutely stunning. There's no doubt that they put a lot of time and effort into this locomotive. There are a few things I perhaps would have liked to have seen. I think the inclusion of maybe a potential metal body or chassis would have been a little bit better. It does seem a little bit light on the tender side, which is a little bit concerning. It doesn't seem to run super well backwards. Maybe that's just my model. But overall, it's very impressive, a very striking locomotive, and certainly one of those machines that made impressions way back in the day. And it's great to see it running in sort of ready to run form now through KR Models. Big ups again to sort of Keith Ravel and the guys at KR Models. They made it really easy for me to pick one of these up through them directly, and that was great assistance. And you know, chatting back and forth with them, they were super nice to me, and for that, thank you guys. Appreciate it if you do watch this video. Overall though, I'm very happy with it. I think it might be a little bit too steep price wise in my opinion. Perhaps £20 less might sort of put it into a perfect sort of Goldilocks zone of price versus product. But overall, I think it's a really solid little machine. I'd love to add some sound to it at some point just to see how that all comes together. The lighting functions are fantastic. There's definitely no issues there, but I'm happy, and it's going to make a great impression on my layout. And I think it'll certainly be one of those sort of very popular locomotives for the Dun-Roman Railway community. I'm sure it will be out and about on a near daily basis just because it's such an iconic and striking locomotive. If you enjoyed this video, please do drop me a thumbs up. That would be greatly appreciated. And until I see you next time, keep your engines fired and stay on track. All the best.